Okay, I hope you all enjoyed that. Music from Mario 64. But I only have a shorter amount of time today, but I made a list of cool stuff to talk about. Well, sort of. So I'm just going to hit this list, and then if anyone wants to talk, they can come up. So come up if you want. First, we announced this bug bounty. It's going to be $100,000 total over the whole summer, and I will massively increase it if there's lots and lots of bugs being found, because the purpose is to basically try to find them all, at least in the base package of software. So yeah, I think some people have asked like, oh, do I just submit the bug as soon as I find it? I think that's probably a good idea. And ideally for you is you find a bug that no one else has found. And again, if I find many bugs, we will massively increase the reward. So we'll see how we do with just what we're paying out now. And I have, for details of that, go to, well, I'll just scroll back in my tweets until I link to it. Then we have this thing, SimplePool. Now, this is only just started, okay? This is brand new. This is wet concrete, okay? But this is an open source pool, because the question is, why isn't the pool software open source? I mean, we want it to be this open source library that anyone use, not some creepy private thing. I think that's a no-brainer. Now, someone, of course, there's always one or two snarky people replying, and they said, oh yeah, we'll give you a free BitAxe and you can increase the hash rate of the pool. This is not, the pool software is not supposed to be an actual replacement for like Foundry and whatever. I explained that in the post, but people didn't understand it. So like the pools, the Foundry and whatever, they're a brand, and they extract a small little fee from being reputable, and that's how they make their money. And this doesn't change that at all. I'm just trying to make it so that the actual software that they use to select transactions to put in blocks is something that we all know about. And I think actually we can solve a bunch of unrelated problems too, but I think we can solve like Relay and some other things, because Relay right now is done in a kind of communist way, where it's kind of just relay for free out of the goodness of your heart. And that's actually not that great. And that has led to all kinds of confusion, such as that led to the difference between the standardness rules and the validity rules, which has been a huge distraction, a waste of everyone's time. It's kind of this is kind of like the opposite of what Luke is trying to do with BIP 110, in the sense that we'll just aggressively revenue maximize. And so we will not be judgmentally stopping people from making money, which is sort of what they're doing. And we can talk about BIP 110 if you want, but okay. And one thing I wanted to mention is, should we change the format? And maybe next week we'll do Clubhouse. I don't know. But if you have a thought, then come up on stage and let me know. Some people want to ask about the Solana thing. I've shared already the plan, like about how people can have fun with the Solana token, redeem it for real eCash. And I shared it with like maybe 4 or 5 people, maybe 5. And if they haven't told you, then they have permission to repost I made like a tiny spreadsheet. It's sort of small, and they can just post it if they want. So it's a pretty simple plan, and I think it kind of works for everyone. Neutralizes the chaos of this and harnesses it for a fun way, because, well, you'll see when you read it. Okay, I wanted to make a note about the eCash brand. Which is that we intend to put out valuable, true information, useful information, all of which 100% true. We intend to put that on eCash.com, but to some extent, well, we need a lot of stupid people to bet against. So we don't necessarily want it to be too obvious how good of an idea that we're doing. So we will be trying, and we will be trying to defend the brand and explain the brand. I think people are still talking a little bit too much about the whole take Satoshi's coins, but I think we want it to be misunderstood slightly to some tiny extent. Okay, and Lightning, yeah, today again, Lightning has come up. I consider Lightning to be a totally settled issue. Every time I talk to someone in the real world, they seem to agree with me. Maybe I'm more intimidating than I expect. In the real world, people are afraid to disagree with me to my face. But then on Twitter, you have, what look like the dumbest people in the world. And then they say like silly things like, oh, does it even matter if Lightning scales, or does it matter if it's custodial? The answer is yes, because it's not Lightning. It's not. And then other people are confused about like if one leg of the trade, like if you make a Lightning transaction and something else does the heavy lifting, some custodial service does the heavy lifting for that, does that still count as a Lightning transaction? The answer is no, because it was all done. Because without the custodial thing, it would not have been possible. So it would have failed so that's the thing, is the linchpin that holds it all together. But a lot of people don't even really, I don't know what to how to deal with these people, because a lot of the Lightning experts, they agree with me and they've already moved on to the next thing. So I don't know. I did want to tell one story about, okay, this is a story that, if you're into Lightning, and because we have to talk about the people who say, oh, I used Lightning yesterday and I saw it work. And I have a little story that I sometimes tell about, this is about Theranos, the fake blood company that ended up being a huge scam and a disaster, and something that everyone regretted associating with. Theranos, look it up. This young man, Tyler Schultz, he was working there. He's the grandson of George Schultz, who's a famous politician, among other things, on the board of Theranos. And the grandfather helped him get the internship. He knew that when people came in to get their blood tested with Theranos, they would come in, they would prick their finger to get the blood drawn, and they would put it in the Theranos machine, and then they would take them on a tour. They would take these people, the patients in theory, they would take them on a tour of the lab, and then while they were on the tour of the lab out of the room, people would come in, open up the Theranos device, take out the blood capsule, whisk it away into a different room, dilute the blood, and then run it on the traditional Siemens technology that had nothing to do with Theranos at all. And then they would print out the results, and they would make it appear as though this was from. Now, this is exactly how Lightning basically is. But this would be very frustrating for Tyler when he tried to blow the whistle on this whole operation being fake. Is people such as his grandfather would say, no, I've seen the machine work. They tested my blood with it. I saw it with my own two eyes. And what they saw was, a hoax. And everything they saw was fake. Now, Lightning is a little bit more real than this, but not very much so. Not significantly so. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, it relies on a lot of heavy lifting done by stuff that has nothing to do with Lightning. And if this stuff went away, the Lightning user experience would be unbearably bad, and it certainly won't work at scale, which was the whole point in the first place. So I just had to react to this whole, because it's a very, very common thing. People think, oh, I used it myself, and it's a perfect overlay. I also made the metaphor. I was talking to Mr. Hoddle. I used the metaphor of a magician. If anyone wants to just interrupt by coming up and asking about anything, but yeah, I got like one or two notes. And a metaphor of a magician, it's like, oh, I saw it. The magician sawed a lady in half, and I saw it with my own two eyes. And it's like, well, it doesn't mean anything, It's like part of the fun of seeing a magician is that the magic is fake, but you're still kind of thinking, like, how did they do that? And that's the opposite of how it is with Lightning, where they lie to you and they just say they misrepresent something as actually being due to HTLC technology, and that's not true at all. But now we all have to listen to it. So that's on my list or whatever. So one other thing, in addition to should we change up the format, second concept is who do we think are like top hater is? Who is a top hater that we could actually get to come in? You know, someone who's actually worth talking to. We have one or two haters who are just like, you know, anonymous bot accounts that have 13 followers and they're just like fake people, obviously. But who could we actually get? You know, maybe Predator or something. I don't know if he speaks on camera or on whatever. But the point is, who could we actually get? And should we then collectively like request them to come next week or something like that? Or should we, I was thinking also we could train like an AI bot. Someone could train and operate an AI bot and they could say, answer how Predator would answer. We can have Vlad or whoever just pretend to be the person. This is a funny idea I had. Again, if you want to come up, just request. Otherwise, I'll keep going down my list of stuff. We have a lot of stuff to announce. I'm not going to announce it all here. I'm just saying in general, lots of stuff has been happening. Lots of people have joined. Lots of people are very interested in what we're doing. The round, we're going to close the round. It has basically sold out. And so it'll have to be closed, and then the price will have to be increased for the final round. So there's been like an overwhelming number of messages and people asking me to. You would think it would like die down a lot, which it has, because actually so many people had messaged me last month that I missed a bunch of messages, and I kind of told them, well, we'll just wait until I'm back in the news, and then I'll message you back. But really, a lot of stuff is happening, and we have a lot of just content to push out, and we have a lot of actual substance to push out. So I have another note here about the Bitcoin SV people, because for some reason we've got a lot of Bitcoin SV people who are very welcome, of course. And we have many fans. Actually, we have a lot of people who are supporters and even investors who are from BSV world. But we also have some haters. And I just wanted to point out that the BSV people, like the Drivechain is actually what the BSVers think that BSV is. And I think when the BSVers finally figure that out, they'll actually become big fans. But I don't know how long that will take. I hope it doesn't take that long. Because the BSV philosophy is kind of like you can use unlimited data on the chain, and the downloading is optional, and then the miners pick up the tab, no matter how expensive it is, and then we can all free ride on the miners using SPV. Now that's very similar to Drivechain. Drivechain says you can use more data whenever you want, and you can download it optionally in the form of choosing which full nodes, if any, you download. And then the node runners, the L2 node runners, they pick up the tab, but not if it's too expensive. And we can all free ride on the nodes using SPV. So it's very, very similar. The problem is just, what if something's too expensive? And in the BSV world, if the nodes become too expensive, the whole network just dies off. Or they do mental gymnastics to try and say like that there's nothing bad about that, or it is bad, but it's not too bad, or whatever. And then the Drivechain world is perfectly fine. It's totally immune, 100% immune to having L2s that have infinite cost, because those die off, but the rest of them survive. So the whole Bitcoin SV mistake is this idea that there's nothing bad about increasing the block size at all, which is false. And the Drivechain idea just says, well, if you increase the block size, some good things will happen, some bad things will happen, and you can each make a trade-off, and they can all just compete. So I think that's what the Bitcoin SV people actually want. If they knew what they wanted, that's what they would want. So yeah, that's just like some of my list of things. I actually have more on my list, but I think we should talk about whatever people want to talk about. And it's 5:15. I don't have that much time today. It is a shame that, well, yeah, usually these really get going very well, and we start off in like the first few minutes are are slow, and then it really picks up, and then by the end we can't escape on time. So, but yeah, I just thought I would give a monologue, boring monologue. Okay, we have someone. We have a Mr. Marcus MM something 1. And then when you approve people, it takes like 20 seconds for them to pop up. But I hope. Yes, hello.
Can you hear me well?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay, so first of all, Drivechains are really nice, you know, all that stuff. And yes, you have been right in almost everything, which is really sad to say as a Bitcoin maximalist myself. And so I have a few points to say here. So first of all, you talk a lot of bad stuff about Lightning, which I kind of agree. I just don't think you're, because like Lightning can be useful for some stuff, you know. I think it can be used for like pre-confirmations, you know, and instant confirmation stuff, and also cross-chain settlement. So I think your rhetoric of like, oh, Lightning is completely useless is not a good rhetoric, you know. That's one thing. Do you agree with that?
Well, okay. First of all, thank you for saying that drive chains are great and that I'm often right about everything. So, and then also, thanks for saying that you mostly agree. You often agree with what I'm saying about Lightning. Okay, I agree that sometimes, like, okay, what I'm trying to achieve with Lightning is, to me, whether or not something has become a cult is much more important. It's like it practically trumps epistemology. You know what I mean? Because once the cult takes over, then everything is a lie. And that's kind of where we are with Lightning, unfortunately. So at this point, it's like even when I had, so years ago, like I'm talking like 2020 or 2021, I had like a tamer critique of Lightning, and people said the same thing. They said you can't criticize Lightning at all. No one wants to hear that. No one will pay attention to you. You won't get like invited back or whatever. So people have been saying that for a while, maybe unreasonably. Lightning does do instant confirmation, but I'm not actually sure that it's Lightning that does that. So to me, even I draw a box around payment channels because there's a big difference between, to me, there's a big difference. To most people, there's no difference at all because they just think custodial Lightning or whatever. But there's the bidirectional payment channels where each person has like funded the channel and then they adjust and then they settle up, and this is only 2 people. There's actually kind of a big difference between that. That already existed before the Lightning Network was a thing, and then the Lightning Network was like, we can have HTLCs and we can use the 6 degrees of separation, Kevin Bacon concept, or whatever, Erdos number, or whatever it is, to make all the payment channels work together in this network. And it's the idea of the network that I just think is not true because in practice, it's not the HTLC.
Yeah, it tends to centralize, which is fine, to be honest. Like we have to have companies do stuff, you know. That's fine. We have to build trust in some places. It's fine, and we need some level of trust for scaling.
Isn't that really not that fine? I mean, I agree with you. I'm fully in favor of companies and brands and all this stuff. I just think that Lightning is represented as this cypherpunk technology where it's like code is law and
but today is not. Yeah, I understand. Most people are using like custodial Lightning. That's a lie. Yeah. I understand.
And so when if people do primal to primal zap on Nostr, they both use primal custodial Lightning. There's no Lightning transaction. There's no Bitcoin transaction. And there's a little Lightning icon. Now, what about if I send Lightning to you and without a custodial person along the way, we would not have had enough liquidity? But you and me are running. We have one channel somewhere is used that's a real Lightning channel, but the route would not have completed. Do you consider that without going through a custodial Lightning hop? Does that count as Lightning to you?
I don't think I really care, because the main point I think is useful is instant confirmations, right? This is a really good payment experience. So as long as we can get some type of that, and I know you don't need Lightning itself, you can do that other ways, like people do those like pre-confirmations with stakers on other chains. Like as long as we can get some form of that, I'm fine. But also the thing is that even Lightning can be better done on a drive chain, because there's a bunch of like opcodes that people want and whatever, and also just having more space so that you can, because there's in the papers there's the thing where you'd have to have like 100 times more block space so everyone could onboard, so like even drive chain could help Lightning, so that's the thing, which is one of the reasons why I don't understand why Lightning people don't go rooting for drive chain. I can't understand that.
Well, it's because it is a cult and it has nothing to do with the technology or truth. Unfortunately, the termites have spread and they've eaten all the wood, and now I think it's like unfixable. That's the problem. So that's part of it, is it's like a test to see who in Lightning world still has a brain. The answer is depressingly few people. And so you're right that Lightning would work better on drive chain for a lot of reasons. More block space, and then there's even I think any prev out is mentioned also in the Lightning white paper. Without the way the Lightning Network was originally designed and the way it's mostly used, when it's used at all, which is not even that often because this custodial Lightning is really what's used. But the design is that you have to keep this giant list, or this growing list of potentially, like you have to check for someone trying to screw you over and then pull a trigger on this if you see them. So you have to have this list, so it just eats up more and more RAM until you refresh the channel. Mm-hmm. And so that all that could be fixed. But it's kind of all moot point, because Barak, the creator of Arc, he was like, he's like very, very smart, and he's very, very skilled, and he's very good with Bitcoin script, and he's very good with Lightning. And when he invented Arc, he was like, well, I was trying to make Lightning work and it doesn't work. So, but even this doesn't matter. Like, I've compiled tons and tons of quotes that people have said on stage. These are from like elite Lightning devs. And like none of them are out of context or anything, where they say it's not going to work out. So, but the problem is that this has nothing to do with technology. You can't separate Lightning from the propaganda, and no one wants to hear any bad news about BTC, even if that is necessary for the good news to come out. Like, even if it's actually good news in disguise, the whole Lightning thing has become basically a giant dunce cap that is discrediting BTC. And so that's the thing, is you can only have any credibility or any kind of virtue or integrity if you just refuse to put up with it at this point, I think.
Okay, so look, what parts of Lightning do you think can be salvaged? Because I think state channels can be a good idea.
Well, it's not that I think that, again, it's not that I think that Lightning, like, I can imagine in 10 years people using HTLCs, and as you mentioned, it's kind of nice when you can go cross chain, and you can so that's kind of cool.
Yeah, the experience I want is like you can have a wallet, which is, let's say, a blue wallet, green wallet kind of thing, and you can pay an invoice, and I don't care what drive chain you're at. You can be in Thunder, you can be in, I don't know, ETH side, Z side, you can be anywhere, and I can pay an invoice from anywhere to anywhere. That's the kind of future I want. And I think something like Lightning can enable it. Maybe not, probably not the Lightning we have today, but something that involves a routing network, and state channels.
Okay, I think, honestly though, this is my real thought is, my real thought is like, well, once you get, because you've said that you like instant confirmations and you like cross chain, And my thought is, once we get instant confirmation, instant transaction settlement, won't you just drop Lightning at that point? Because why deal with all this other stuff that's not real about the channels and the liquidity and being online to receive and signing with a hot wallet?
Yeah.
Why
That
don't you
can
get
work.
rid
But
of it
like,
all?
what kind of pre-confirmations are you thinking about?
Well, I have a bunch of ideas. I was actually going to. So the thing is, now I've been I'm losing a lot. I don't have as much free time as I used to have. So now it's a shame because I would normally I would be like to investigate, but now I have like lots of people talking to me and asking me for things. But I was thinking about I have compiled a document of instant settlement, like instant finality ideas. And I was working on it a few days ago, and it's somewhere on this computer actually. But I was thinking about publishing it all and then putting some kind of contest to see if people have any new ideas. And normally I would just try to look into it myself. But I'm actually just very low on time at the moment. But I think this would help. Okay, so people have proposed several different types of idea, as you probably know. So one is just from a technical point of view, it's very easy to prove guilt because the only reason that ZeroConf is not secure is because you could sign two transactions, right? I hope everyone is following this. This part is not that hard, hopefully. So if you could only sign once with your private key, then everything would be fine. And there would be no need for, okay, so what does that mean? Well, what it means is in order to exploit ZeroConf and defraud someone, you have to sign the transaction. Then you, the owner of the key, you have to sign the second thing. So one idea that a lot of people had is, hey, we can make it so that if anyone ever publishes both of them, like if you assemble them together and say, look, this guy signed twice. He signed twice and he didn't add a flag for for replaced by fee or some legitimate way, you could easily rope that off. You can say, well, look, then this proves that this person did the wrong thing. And then people have suggested something. You'd have bonds that where miners can collect. You put a $200 bond, and then everything you buy that's less than $200, the merchant actually has a lot of assurance that if they reference this bond somehow in the transaction, then now something that I always bring up, and it's a long-winded speech, but actually a lot of things don't need ZeroConf. So even though it is a good experience, most things don't. But yeah, I agree that the user experience is going to kill people because people love, attention is very scarce and people don't want to be looking at the wallet to see, oh, did it confirm? So it is a very important thing. But of course, there's a lot of stuff that you can buy. If you buy something on Amazon, you pay, and if the transaction doesn't go through, they can just interpret that as you canceling, and then they just don't ship it to you. So that's the whole category of things where it doesn't actually matter. The speed, they can just say, we got it. They can see it in the mempool and say, we have ZeroConf, and okay, so as long as you're not in a situation where blocks are full, ZeroConf is actually really, really, really close to being secure already in a wide number of use cases. I've also mentioned other situations like you buy something in person, you buy coffee in person, your face is on the video camera, and it's just kind of a small amount of money. So then they can, just refer to the police, say this guy didn't pay, he maliciously double spent us, and that's shoplifting or whatever. I've also said that you could just use the chain a different way. So you have Bit Refill where people spend their BTC on the gift card. Maybe that takes 1 hour to get 6 confirmations. But now once you have the gift card, now you're back to the instant thing. So you just reload every month. So I have a whole little document full of ideas. I did want to maybe publish some kind of challenge where people could win a prize if they have any better ideas or if they find any ideas. Because a lot of ideas are found. And then even I was I remember a few different ideas, they had different names. And I tried to go back and find some of them, but because of dead internet theory, there's a few that I know are out there that I couldn't find. So I don't know where they are, but they were interesting back in the day.
Yeah, and what about the cross-chain part? Because okay, I'm pretty sure you were right that we can solve instant confirmations in other ways. But what about the cross-chain part? Right? Would it be
Well, we
like an
have a
atomic
different
swap?
L2. We have that we call coin shift, and
Yeah,
it
yeah, I've
really
seen CoinShift.
it's kind of an interesting. I'm not saying that this is the magic bullet that will fix everything. I mean, you were saying before we need companies and we need brands and we need whatever. So I actually think the exchanges make a lot of money on this. On one weird development is that now these days the exchanges make so much money, but now if you just download like a normal app, many of the apps today, like the wallet apps, they have like swaps and stuff built in. And to the extent that like, the exchange is sort of like widely available, it's kind of snuck up on everyone. It snuck up on me. I was like, wow, every little phone wallet is like an exchange now. And I don't remember handing over my personal information, like my driver's license, to any of these. So
Yeah, but I think,
they're captive.
but I think most of these are like on-chain swaps, so it has to be in the same chain. There are bridges, but we'd have to settle on some design. I mean, it can be purely market provided, which is fine, but I would prefer if you had some like atomic swap kind of thing.
Yeah, of course. Um, like I think that yeah, and I don't think the idea behind coin shift is not even to be like this big thing at scale. Coin shift is just supposed to be like as a last resort, it will always be there. So why not improve on it by operating an exchange business or something? So it's kind of a little bit like it's kind of like a fallback type of an idea. But it's a cool idea anyways. We should try it out. And it's technically the way it works is it just says when you run this sidechain, it actually you have to run as dependencies like all these other L1 nodes, and then they just combines them all. So it's just aware of every transaction.
Yeah, that's which is kind of a weird idea because like those chains like Litecoin and Monero, they are always hard forking. So like that means
Yeah, it will not work. If they hard fork, it will either you either have to hard fork coin shift or it will just stop working with that. And you'd have to start up coin shift like 2 in like a nearby slot, and it would just but yeah, they shouldn't hard fork, and that's a mistake.
But they do, yeah. But that's the thing, they always do. I think Monero has this like 6 month or something hard fork policy.
Yeah, I mean, they should have phased that out by now, I think. But they're doing something very ambitious recently. This whole chain proof thing, which is like much more ambitious than the ring signature. So I suppose that would make it warranted. But yeah, the hard fork makes the whole thing custodial, kind of, because you need to know where to get the new software.
Yeah, that's why I'm not sure CoinShift works, and because of this, because like they will hard fork, their culture.
Yeah, but the hard fork is kind of cheating to say it doesn't work, because if you imagine like you scheme up some Lightning Monero swap, that would still count as having. You would still have to like update the stack to deal with the new hard forked Monero.
Yeah, but the difference is that in CoinShift, what in practice is happening is that the CoinShift L2 is deciding, or well, the consensus of this L2 is deciding what is the real Monero or what is the real Litecoin. Whereas with when you have this Lightning stuff, you can still use the old one if you want to, before the split.
I think that's probably true, I suppose, because it's just would be checking if the. So yeah, I think maybe you might be right about that. I do think again that like I don't think that's enough to save that, because the problem with Lightning is not the problem with Lightning is that
I'm not saying you have to do Lightning. I'm saying that atomic swaps in general, Lightning is just a part of this.
Well, we did program something once. This was just like a little toy experiment. But yeah, people have done this type of thing. Like we had like for fast withdrawals from Drivechain because the withdrawals are slow, but it's expected that people would just not use the BIP 300 part to withdraw. They could just swap with someone, pay a small fee, and there's like a spectrum of, this is not really answering your question at all, but there's like a spectrum of like, there used to be like Bitcoin OTC, like over IRC, and people would just send like, they would just like send instructions on where to send US dollars. People would send the US dollars and then they'd send the BTC, and there was no HTLC and there was no nothing. And that's how a lot of stuff works. So there's a lot of like sites where they just send, it relies on the brand of the thing.
Yeah, the problem is that you either have to trust the brand or you are introducing more friction, So like the thing about both market swaps and atomic swaps is that they are, there's no friction, just press a button and bam, yeah. So as I said, that can indeed be done by market swaps. We have like a SideShift and other market swap providers today. Like they work. I just don't like that. I don't like having to need them,
Yeah, I think that's very admirable. I agree. I mean, a moment ago you said that it didn't bother you as much that a lot of Lightning is custodial or whatever. So that may not be.
Not exactly what I said. Not exactly what I said. I mean, it does bother me that Lightning is custodial. The part that doesn't bother me is some centralization in like LSPs, and because like let's say Phoenix, the Phoenix wallet in mobile is a non-custodial wallet. And you also have a specific LSP that you connect to, and that's fine, because the thing with having a brand is like I'm fine with having a brand that I need to trust in some manner, like liking kind of trust. What I don't like is having to trust them with my funds. I need to know that like if they fail, if they explode for any reason, I can eventually take my funds back. And Lightning does provide that. There are other models like Arc that also provide this kind of thing with more centralization. Because everyone's on the same Arc, and it can be efficient. Like I'm fine with these kinds of models.
Yeah, but I think actually the Lightning style is worse than the atomic swap style, because when you atomic swap, it's like a very small, ephemeral, just short-lived trust. It's like you say, I want to swap $500 of this coin for $500 of some other coin, Litecoin or whatever. And other than that, your money is not with them. Other than that, during this transaction, your money is not with them. But if instead the idea is that everyone pays everyone on ARC, then a lot of your money is in the ARC machine, for example, or in the LSP, and that's not the good situation where it's kind of stored up, I think.
I mean, as long as you can enforce your unilateral exit or some kind of this,
well, that's exactly what you can't do, though, if it...
yeah, you can't because there's no block space. Yeah, I understand that part.
Exactly. They don't even like know when they bring that up. They don't really have any idea what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And I'm getting tired of repeating myself to them, not to you, of course, but like it's like every year they use these same lines.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Even with Drivechains, we can probably do better things that look like Arc but are just better. Because Arc kind of reminds me of it's not rollup, but like those things that look like rollups. They call it like Validium and Validia chains, that kind of stuff. Arc kind of looks like some of these with other requirements too. But like you can do some very interesting stuff once you get Drivechains, because you can just build anything on Drivechains. Which brings me to another thing I've been thinking, which is we were going to launch with a few Drivechains. I have noticed we don't have like a ETH side Drivechains. Are we going to have that at launch?
Like we built ETH side in, I think it was like maybe 2023 or I don't know. And I kind of lost interest in it, honestly. But it's a commonly requested thing. I mean, it's funny because a lot of people say they're in for the tech, or they say Ethereum sucks and is a shitcoin or whatever. I mean, I genuinely think Ethereum is actually not that interesting. And a lot of what people do, what do most people really actually do on Ethereum? Is they're actually sending stable coins, or they're doing like something else that's actually better handled by like either Thunder or Bit Assets or something.
Yeah,
So
I
even though
agree.
we built a fully working ETH side, I like just totally lost interest in maintaining it or having people pay more attention to it. So the question is, bring it back, or I mean, I guess the answer is yes, but I really thought it's actually uninspiring, and it just leads. And the one good thing about it would be that you wouldn't have this problem where it's like Ethereum versus Solana versus whatever. You would just have like different Ethereums of like different sizes. So I don't know. I'm not exactly sure about that. What to say about that? But I think. So I don't know, because I think it seems like on paper the answer should be, of course, we'll make each side. But really, I gotta just totally honest. I'm just like, I feel so bored, like thinking about it, and it's kind of like. But I think maybe I don't know. I have no idea. If more people are interested in it, then obviously they could. I think it's a good idea to have. I don't know how many people actually use it. I don't know how many people actually use any of the stuff, of course. I guess it's a long-winded and rambling answer, so sorry about that. I don't know.
Yeah, the thing with if side is like, I agree that if is not really that interesting. It has a lot of problems with with gas and whatever. But the thing is, I think it's interesting for two perspectives. First of all, even if it's not interesting by itself, I think it's interesting as a testing ground for like more exotic Drivechain kind of experimentation. Because like, let's say I want to build a new Drivechain, right? And I want to test out the idea out in the wild, like now, But I don't want to, or I cannot for some reason. Maybe I don't have enough support or whatever of the miners. I just want to try out some new design. I can do it on like ETH side, I can build my drive chain right there, and because it's Turing complete, I can just run anything there, right? So even though it's not going to be efficient, it might work as a testing ground, and then later I can make it into an actual drive chain, which enters another thing I was thinking, which is governance, because a lot of chains have this governance talk, and I wonder how it will pan out in over here, because like, yeah, we can have other drive chains technically, but then again, the thing it's social consensus. We need miners running it. We need miners to think it's a good idea, which doesn't seem to have worked out for BTC, right? Because in BTC we could technically have drive chains. Miners could just like run PEEP 300 and 301 software, but they didn't. So like, why? I don't know. Like, why would they run new drive chains on after launch?
Well, yeah, those are very good questions. Let me try to do them in order. First of all, about Ethereum with the gas, I'm glad you brought that up, because basically Ethereum says you can do anything you want, but you have to pay this gas cost. But actually, with sidechains, it's kind of like you can already do whatever you want, launch any sidechain you want, and there's no gas cost. So there's just a full node that people have to run, and that's better in many ways, because certain things the full node should just like tank for everyone. Like it should just have like the state, and then like, why charge anyone gas if you don't need to? Just charge transaction fee, which is way, way, way better. There's another point that I made. This is an argument I made back in 2015, 2016, a long time ago. Basically 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago. And the argument when something like this was I called it like categorical control, or like topical control, which was like, in the EVM, you can do whatever you want, but that actually might be kind of annoying, because people might make weird contracts that like attack other contracts, or do something where they just like crowd something else out.
Yeah, that was sidechain privatization. I've seen that one.
That's exactly right. Yes. Thank you for watching that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can see that was way ahead of its time. And even now, like, I don't even think there's enough of a shared language for people to even talk about it now. But I thought the title was good. And so I was thinking, like, people will grow frustrated with this open chain, and they're tired of it. There'll be all these special purpose chains around that'll kind of be a little bit more efficient because they'll have some kind of state that is related to their purpose. Like the name sidechain can have like the registry of names. They can do stuff with that. Whereas the EVM chain would have to kind of like have everything of everything. And so this is a theoretical argument that I made. I have no idea if it's going to actually pan out or if it, already has panned out, maybe to some extent.
Yeah, for what I've seen, I don't think that happened. I haven't seen any like smart contract attacking each other. I haven't ever seen that kind of thing happening.
Yeah, it'd be interesting if it just sort of never happened, or if miners wanted to build something to just filter it. But now we're going to end up like Luke Dash Jr., where we have the moral committee that filters out the bad transactions, which seems like a kind of a bad road to go down.
I mean, that's the thing. Miners seem very passive, because like there was an article on I think it was Litecoin, the guy Litecoin. I don't know his name. He wrote an article basically saying that there was an optimistic bridge, which technically miners could steal from that bridge, and yet they didn't, and it was operating for like years and years, and they didn't ever attack it, and it had like billions of dollars of
well, yeah, it's very similar. Drivechain is very, very similar to like, and then when people shortened it, so there was this thing wormhole or something. A lot of this stuff was very similar to Drivechain, except that it kind of pushed the envelope on like the parameters. And then some of those
was Rainbow Bridge. I think it was called Rainbow Bridge. Yeah.
But the ones that are more similar to Drivechain work just fine, which is sort of very validating, I think. And so okay, well, that brings me to the second question about governance. First of all, I think this is a very misunderstood idea. Like people think like, oh, Bitcoin Core is running BTC, and then when Paul's going to run eCash, not true. And it's going to be like people are going to discover how hard it is to run a project or something, and that Bitcoin Core is not perfect, but it's better than all. That's completely false. Like the L1 on eCash will be identical to Bitcoin Core, both now and like in the future. It won't be literally identical, but it'll basically be identical. And whatever they merge, it'll just be merged. So it'll be the same. The BIP 300 301 enforcer, which is how BIP 300 and 301 is activated and used, that should be like a completable task. So ideally, it would already be done now. I'm sure there are some tweaks, but ideally, it would not even have to be changed ever again after the project launches, and ideally even months before the project launches. So that's a completable thing. And then these L2s, they're a little bit more like, oh yeah, sure, like I'm going to have like L2s that I like and that I'm opinionated about. But the L2s are kind of like add, delete, whatever L2s the miners want. Now, leads directly to your point about why, if the miners are not in the BTC world, the miners could already add or subtract drive chains at will, individual ones as a set. My honest explanation for why they have not is that they don't have any understanding of the issues at all, which I think is a big problem for them, because they constantly complain about having no money, and they complain that nothing is activating. And even I made a joke at Las Vegas. I was on stage on Security Budget Day 1. You can find it, Security Budget panel. And I was like, well, hey, listen to Nick from Luxor, CEO of Luxor. And I was like, hey, listen, you guys, you run a pool. You could call all of your pool friends and you could just activate 15 soft forks if you really wanted to. And, people kind of laughed, and he kind of had nothing to say to that. I would be interested in exploring that. Now, I think part of the passivity of the miners has been like bred into them or beaten into them, however you want to think about it, because the soft fork used to not be controversial at all. This isn't going to give you a long war story now, but hopefully not too long. But soft fork didn't used to be controversial at all, and there was no controversy at all. It was just a code change that happened to not do anything until 51% of the miners upgraded to the new version. So it meant very, very, very little. And there are even many embarrassing instances where like stuff was not activated right, or miners signaled that they updated, but they didn't actually update. And so they, wow, it's already 5:51. All right, I guess we'll have to go to 6:30. But so they were like, they would do all this stuff, but none of it was controversial at all. And even when SegWit happened, it wasn't the SegWit part that was controversial. SegWit was just held hostage because the miners had been convinced by large blockers that the core developers were not necessarily acting in what they thought was their best interest. So they decided to, if they're like, oh, you're not going to do what I want, I won't do what you want. And this whole thing became like, and that was SegWit. And then Taproot was kind of like a weird image reverse shadow echo of that. And then nothing has happened since. So the fact that miners are too passive, that is why BTC is going to die off. So that it's not like a permanent feature of Bitcoin.
About that. So, well, eCash is a hard fork, and it has those properties of like basically trying to steal hash rate because it's the same. It has a bigger potential for fees, and also it has the same mining algorithm. So like, it tries to kill Bitcoin, right? So first of all, Bitcoin Cash kind of tried, but it didn't. I'm not even sure if they still use the same hashing algo, but whatever. So the thing is, right now, what I expect will happen is that launch day comes, the price just goes down absurdly, and then sometime later it starts getting some users and whatever, but it just becomes another altcoin. That's what I imagine will happen. So like I'm at the point where I think I'm pretty sure this is a good idea. Even with the shed stuff, which is not doesn't look good. I think it's a good idea, and I think the price will increase. But it will be something like what BSH did. And at the same time, even though I think the fork is a good idea, I think it will not overthrow Bitcoin. Maybe if we got enough users, it's gonna be a situation where like we can have maybe more hash rate, but then Bitcoin is still the king, which is gonna be a really strange situation if that happens at all. But I don't know, man. I'm pessimistic, but I want it to be optimistic.
Yeah, well, sure. Let me just finish the governance idea of like why would miners activate, why would they care about specific drive chains? I think it'd be a very different story after, in a world where like the coin has been specifically created for this, with this design in mind, that there will be these scaling in layers, but the layers will be merge mined L2s, and most of the transaction fee revenue that miners get will come to them. I think they have a much more direct, they've seen it, they see it with their own two eyes that, when we get money from each of these. So that I think that makes it much easier for the one thing that's been depressing is that you would think the pools would specialize because they are kind of like, if you imagine a world where like, so people defer to the pool, like the pool has a brand, and the pool is like one person whose like full-time job is to assemble the blocks and maintain the block construction. Whereas the individual hashers, they are diffuse and they have only a very small percentage of the hash rate. So you would think like Foundry would have like a whole department about like, what should we do about quantum? What should we do about whatever? And they would put out, now, I happen to know about one historical fact that happened, which is that they knew about the Epic SAT, the Ordinals SAT, and Foundry emailed. Suppose this is what I was told by reputable sources. Maybe it's not, but I believed it. I still believe it. They were told that excuse me, I was told that they emailed their members. They said, we will isolate the Epic Sat Ordinal, which is coming up, for you guys, and then we'll sell it and give you guys the money. And then apparently they got a big backlash from this. Like, people were messaging them. And because Ordinals was conflated, Ordinals and inscriptions, this has become controversial. And so people were emailing Foundry saying, why are you getting us involved with this Ordinals controversy? And so then Foundry instead did nothing, and then it was via BTC that mined the Epic Sat. This is one single Satoshi, so worth almost nothing, fractions of a penny. And but they sold that for like 13 BTC. So this is a story about how it's not good enough for the pools to know what they're talking about. There can't be any it can't be huge discrepancy or a huge mistrust between the pools and their clients. So now you see, actually, this is all Lightning's fault, actually, because it's not Lightning specifically, but when you have a culture where everyone believes false things and all kinds of nonsense is constantly spreading, and people are paranoid and mistrustful, which is healthy to some extent, but we have to fight against like massive lies which are being told in the Bitcoin community by Bitcoiners to other Bitcoiners on like an enormous scale, and there's a huge fallout from this. So then Foundry decided, we'll just have no opinion on anything. And so I don't think that would, to me, that doesn't apply at all to when you have a different, you hard fork into eCash and you have this separate thing. And this is directly in their financial interest to add more L2s and try them out and only get rid of them if they are kind of causing some kind of huge hit to the bottom line in some mysterious way. Which is very unlikely to come up in the first place. This is very hard to add a drive chain that like decreases total mining revenues. So of course they would be thinking, we should add them. And of course, if they can't, if you can't convince miners to add the L2, then that it might mean that the L2 is just not that compelling at first. Just the fact that we'd have 2 or 3 L2s, I think this dramatically alters governance. So if we just ship with a few different L2s, it's a completely different governance situation, where it's like with Bitcoin Core, if you try and you get rejected, then it's kind of like sort of shameful for you, even if your idea was good. And then now it becomes awkward for Bitcoin Core. They can never admit that they made a mistake. It will be awkward for them if the idea ever succeeds. But it's completely different when you can go across the street from one L2 to a different, like if you had Thunder 1, Thunder 2. And then he was like, I'm going to take my idea to the other L2 then. Fine. I think that's or I'm going to embark upon the process to create a new L2. So I think it's a completely different situation in many ways. Now, of course, it could still be the case. We could still learn that miners' attention is so it's just easier to get away with being passive. Like, you have a bunch of mining pools. Hey, what's their opinion on such and such? Mostly they just haven't weighed in. So, I think it's a governance defect in Bitcoin that, it could be fixed. But no one even cares because the whole situation as a whole is so screwed up that it would actually, even if you fixed like pools having an opinion on things, which you could fix if you tried, it wouldn't really change the fact that, people like Core don't want to stick out they're cowards and they don't want to stick out their neck for anything that is actually interesting. And people like Michael Saylor don't want any Bitcoin development to take place at all, and they don't want any privacy improvements, and probably theoretically happy that the Samurai devs went to jail. I would imagine that's logically implied by Michael Saylor's position. So we already live in this world where everything is totally out of whack. So I think that the governance situation is fine. Now, if we go back to hash rate, you had laid out a scenario where coin launches and then you say the price goes down, but that's kind of weird, isn't it? Because really the price is kind of basically zero before it exists. That's my interpretation, is that it can only go up You know,
I mean,
there's
like,
nothing.
I mean, like, from the starting price or whatever that is, it keeps going down for some time. That's what I meant.
Yeah, a lot of people will sell. A lot of these people are dead weight, and we need them to sell. So that's, and I think a lot of people are wait. Some people have the opinion that it's pointless to actually promote the coin until, you know, like people are waiting for, like, the low price automatically is like a feedback loop that actually helps the project. So the high price helps and the low price helps. It sounds paradoxical and weird, and it sort of is to some extent. But if you think about it like this, the high price helps obviously because it's validating for the project, and it makes everyone think, oh, this was the right idea. And they think, now not only do I know this is a good idea, but a lot of other people know as well. So that's very, very good, obviously. But the low price also, it also invites a little bit of thought for people where they say, well, hey, listen, before such and such was the case, but now the price is so low that, you know, if I just sell 1% of my BTC or whatever it is, I can accumulate a huge quantity of this other thing. And so anyone out there who thinks, oh, you know what this project needs is just one or two or three things, and I could give it one of them, and maybe I could find someone to give it the other two. Now they have an incentive to buy, tune up the project. Like maybe the only thing the project needs is the right way of explaining the project, or maybe it needs, you know, whatever, a wallet or something. Just these are just examples. But so the price will kind of have to go. We kind of do need, because again, the problem is cultural. So we need the community to separate, and we need different people to be different stakeholders on the coin. Because until you do that, why would anyone unveil their big move? Because the way to make money is to hope that if you're a true believer, you kind of want to hope that you can accumulate at a very low price and then reveal your big thing. And, you know, when the hard fork occurs, there'll be millions of people who own the coin and maybe find out, maybe not all of them will find out about it, but then that is certainly, it leads to these conversations about, okay, what exactly will ETFs and all these people do with the coin? They could try to ignore it or destroy it or sell it or whatever. But then the point is to have to, you know, I think all those things, any of those things would be good actually for the project. Now, the issue is the end game. The end game is everything in chess and usually in life, but not always. So you were saying in your little story that the price go down, we'll get some users, and then it'll become like an altcoin. Then you said something kind of curious where you said, oh, maybe one day it'll have more hash rate, but it will still be low on the list. The scenario that interests me the most is a scenario where the transaction fee revenues from usage, so forget about the exchange rate, but the exchange rate transaction fees are rising geometrically. So that doesn't mean super high, but maybe they go up, let's say they go up 10% every year. To me, this means that eventually there will be a time, just mathematically. So let's say BTC's transaction fees are flat, but on eCash across all the L2s, they grow 10% a year. And, you know, like we have to zoom way out here depending on where we started, because 10% of 45 cents is a lot less than 10% of like whatever, $100 million. But, you know, have you ever played that game where someone says, would you rather have $1 million or would you rather have 1 penny on January 1st and then 2 pennies on January 2nd and then 4 pennies on January 3rd, and then you get to January 31st and then you stop? And that's the thing about geometric growth, is it accumulates to an enormous extent. And so if you get to a point where the transaction fee revenues, and of course, what are BTC's transaction fee revenues today? Very, very low. And the block subsidy cannot be bolstered significantly by increases in price any longer, both because the price can't go up very much, but also because the halvings cut 95% every 16 years. They cut 95% of the block subsidy value anyway. So if you have a situation where BTC transaction fees are like sort of basically flat, paid to miners, and you have a situation where rival chain is going up 10% per year, you'll eventually reach a point where they go up so much, they're going up so much in each 2-week period, that it will just drain all 100% of the hash rate from BTC. Because eventually it will be just leaping up by such a huge amount that it will take basically forever for the BTC hash rate to adjust down. And then once it does adjust down, it'll already be too late because the fee rate will just keep growing. Now, of course, you have to like take out a pen and a paper and try to figure out when, if ever, that might happen. But that is like a guaranteed win in the end game if nothing changes. Now, of course, a million things would change. BTC will probably activate Drivechains at some point, or something similar, maybe. I don't know. But they won't actually, if I'm right about how screwed up the culture is, which the culture is screwed up because basically everything that everyone says is, I don't know what the exact word to describe it is, but basically we live in a world where in Bitcoin, a lot of people are lying to themselves about like why the project is important or how to add value to it, or whether or not it's important that we have any users, or whether or not it's like, do we need revenue for miners? Do we need privacy? Do we need developers? Do we actually compete against these other coins? People are lying to themselves on a huge, massive scale. Lightning is just one example of that. And I think the situation is probably unfixable, and that will mean that all the smart people will just keep leaving. So that's the real death spiral, is just that everyone's just the exit liquidity.
Yeah, but like money has network effects. You definitely know that. So the thing is, my current expectation is that it will both be the case that eCash will be, in some sense, a success, but also that Bitcoin will stay being king, because like you can very much sustain a situation where you have like centralized lighting and custodians and whatever, and people mostly use it through them, and then also it's the number one, because like kind of like the gold standard, people use banks and whatever, which was not ideal, but it worked, and so I imagine that's my current expectation, that it will both be the case that yes, eCash will have some success, but also that Bitcoin will stay being the king, and it will just become a centralized thing, in that sense.
Well, I think the network effect cut both ways, because Bitcoin is currently held up by a lot of high expectations that the price will continue to go up, that it will eventually take over as global money. Like a lot of people have these expectations. So that's lifting BTC up. I think, what has stronger network effects than Bitcoin is the US dollar. So if you only think network effects matter, then the US dollar is going to stomp Bitcoin into the ground. But you clearly don't think that. The network effect has the opposite issue, like I was talking about, where the network effect has, like I just mentioned before, like if the price is low, then anyone who thinks, oh, you know what this project needs to increase the price is just these 1, 2, or 3 things I'm going to buy and then do those things, and then as part of the whole project, I'm going to make money. That the opposite is true, and this has already happened in BTC, where Bitcoin used to have lots and lots of really smart people. But as the price has gone up, a lot of people have just, they just shrug and they just decide, you know what, I've got a family now, I've got kids, and people just quit. So the smartest, best people who joined Bitcoin the earliest, because like if you joined Bitcoin after 2019, then you really don't have an opinion about anything. But all the smartest people who joined earliest, a lot of them just like kind of basically retired or left. And so the network effect hits the other way, because it's like the price is high, but it's like, oh yeah, just liquidate. So I agree to some extent, but I think that really what we've seen is, a lot of complacency, because Bitcoin has been number one for so long. People just think, there's numerous examples, fall of Rome being the big one, but there's many examples of people just saying, well, this has been around for a long time. It's pretty hard to make something permanent, especially when it's constantly lying to itself about important issues. So I think actually the network effect is going to be partly the Novocaine that blinds everyone to all the problems in BTC. People just think, well, hey, this is number one. So anything you can come up with any problem you want. You could say, look, I found this really big problem, and people say, hey, look, it's number one. It's like when that lady says 9/11 on Family Guy, and it's just whatever the thing is, we could say, oh, like whatever problem you could bring up, you could say, well, it has no future, it's going to die off. People just say, well, it's number one. So it's like a thought terminating cliche.
Yeah, to be more specific, it's because you said the thing about the US dollar having network effects and all. That's true, but the thing is that the US dollar is inflationary as with any other fiat currency, whereas Bitcoin is not inflationary, So I think that's one of the strongest things.
No, but you're right. You're saying that the properties also matter. That's all I'm trying to say, is the network effects matter and the properties matter.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it's not only network effects.
Sure, but the thing is, it seems to me that the network effects matter more in the sense that people can use Bitcoin like in a centralized way, and they already do, and they will probably keep doing that, So I don't know. The thing is, we'll have to see, only time will tell. That's the thing.
Yeah, of course. No, I don't think that we have a very high chance of succeeding, but we do have a much higher chance than I think. I don't think people realize just how screwed up BTC is, actually, and how much of it will just automatically come to light eventually. And so it'll be like the Theranos example. I mean, it's already 6:12, so hopefully if someone wants to come up and talk, please request soon. But it'll be like the Theranos example where like the papering over the hard problems has only made them much worse. Like a lot of the problems, basically all of the problems that BTC has now could easily be fixed if we could just talk about them, but we cannot. So we can never fix them. Okay. We have Sat Scholar. Hello. Yes, hello. I think I added him.
Yeah, I'm here.
Hello.
Hey, Paul.
Yes, hello. How are you?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm good, man. I wasn't sure I had too much to add to this particular conversation of these particular topics. I do think that, I think a lot of us know that there's some issues with Bitcoin Core that's going on. I think I remember, and I think I've spoken to you about this, Paul. Like we used to talk about having like Litecoin as like a playground, right, to experiment and do things on, and then maybe bring those things to Bitcoin, right? To try to have like a tempered expectation of how to move things forward in a development fashion. And I don't even see things like that happen anymore. So I think more or less people talk about like whether or not a project succeeds or not, I think is not almost the right way to look at it. But the better way to look at it is what other benefits can come from having advancements in development in the space in general, right? If somebody wants to test something on a real chain with real liquidity, right, and you're not ever going to be able to test that on Bitcoin's mainnet, but there's another chain out there that allows you to kind of step forward and test out these theories, like that's not really a bad thing. I think that's a good thing, and I think having an ability to test things and have a test bed that has the ability to have some real loss. Because if you're just testing things without it's like playing poker without money, right? Sure, you can do it, and maybe you might even get good, but the odds of that are slim. If you're going to learn to play poker, you got to learn to play with real money, because then there's real chances on the table, real losses on the table, and you're able to actually learn from mistakes and grow. And so that's kind of what I think. I'm not sure if that really adds to this specific conversation or not.
No, I think it's a very good point, and it speaks to. I agree, and I also disagree slightly, which I'll get to that. But I think, yeah, there's stuff like Bitcoin Inquisition and Litecoin and stuff used to be like, and people used to just be able to play around and tinker with things. And I think the lack of tinkering, it actually is a result of this weird cult that we formed, where everyone just thinks that Bitcoin is perfect, Bitcoin can't be improved, immaculate conception, blah blah blah. And so it's become like a hatred and fear of anything new, and dismissal of all innovation, and so all that. I think all that's related. That's also related to just overconfident stuff shared about what Lightning can do and whatever. People just stick to the same points year after year. They're not true. Okay, now there's a part where I disagree, and I kind of think more like Marcus is right to focus on like, will it replace BTC? Because you're talking about poker, rightly so, but it's like in poker, imagine there's a thing in poker where if you win the hand, you also lose all of your money. So if you lose, you lose, and then if you win, you lose. Well, people won't even bother playing the game. And that is an issue with this type of scenario, because if you say, oh, I've got a better version of Bitcoin, Bitcoin 2.0, then you put it out there and then everyone realizes that, oh, it is better. But if it's very easy for BTC to just then copy it, so then you're in the situation where if you lose, you lose. If your idea actually sucks and it's terrible, then you lose. But if you win, you also lose. So you kind of you really do need to frame the whole thing in terms of, can this actually become number one? Because that's the only way anyone will. In my view, is that there will be only one cryptocurrency. So it's like, to me, they'll either all be zero or they'll be very high. There'll be one winner and a lot of losers. So I kind of think like, yeah, you're either it'll just end up being worth zero if it's no good, and if it wins, it will be worth a ton. But in order for it to win, BTC has to lose. So that is why I think you might want. There is some. It's almost like if you can't replace BTC, you have no property right into the idea. Like you have. I'm not talking about like a patent or anything. I'm just saying like it doesn't matter if the idea is good, because even if it's good, you'll lose. And so you kind of only want to talk about will it win? And that's kind of why I do focus on the cultural issues in BTC, which I think are just going to kill BTC. One guy has been trying iron, whatever, and I keep trying to bring him up, but it sort of doesn't work. But I'm going to try again. But so yeah, I think that you kind of have no choice but to frame it as. I think it worked this time. You kind of have no choice but to frame it as a rivalrous competition. Because otherwise you can't do the experiment. It's exactly what you were saying. You were saying you need to do it with real poker chips.
You got to do it with real. Yeah. I mean, and I think the competition is a good thing regardless, right? I mean, I think sometimes you need competition. Otherwise, you get lazy and hubris starts to set in.
Right. But it's not a real competition unless the winner can win and the loser loses. So I think that's kind of related. Okay, we got Iron is now up here. Hello.
Hey, Paul, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great.
Thanks for having me. Hey, I
no
talked to a couple of the guys. They mentioned that you were okay with, I guess, posting the new Twitter channel, since I know we had with the communities kind of going away, the X did away with it. So we created a new blue check verified Twitter channel for the Solana eCash version of the project. So just wanted to kind of highlight that. I'll tweet it out, but it would love if you wouldn't mind sharing it at some point. And if you had any updates, I know some of the guys just want me to ask you kind of what your thoughts were for preliminary ideas that you had, if you're open to discussing it.
It's the same idea, and I did make like a tiny little spreadsheet. It's very, very tiny, but I shared it with a few people, so I'll share it with you also, and people can post it. I thought it's a very simple idea where it's just like, the creator fees are that's just like money being paid to me. So I'll just interpret that as people purchasing the real eCash, and then the challenge is logistically getting it back. But that's what I posted about. So okay. I think it would be fun for everyone. It'd be interesting. Hopefully.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, man. It's definitely support what you're doing. I mean, honestly, it feels like, second chance Bitcoin. Not only are you improving the chain that's dying in a number of ways, but for the average, retail person who might have missed it in 2011, it's literally like getting in a hot tub time machine and going back and having an opportunity to buy Bitcoin at $30 a coin. So, super fun project to be a part of. I appreciate you.
Well, hey, thank you.
I just want to say too, to a lot of people that are saying like you can't do this or you shouldn't do this. I mean, if we're not free market capitalists and libertarians working with open source protocols, like, then what else are we? Like, people could do pretty much whatever they want, and if it fails, it fails. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Like, to say you can't, you can't do this, you can't do something with your own money. I really just reject that framing in its totality.
Well, yeah, I agree. And I would also point out that, people said this before when Bitcoin was first created. People said, oh, they can't just do that. They can't just create. So it's funny that we Bitcoiners are rebels. But I think what some of these people mean, if we could play devil's advocate for them, should we even bother? I don't know. But it's like these people have an argument that goes something like this, and they say, well, hey, Bitcoin is the final solution. Bitcoin is the one answer, and it's the perfect thing, and everything else is a distraction. So Bitcoin is perfect, and everything else is different from perfect, aka worse. And so they think anyone who talks about anything other than shilling Bitcoin, and anyone who does get involved with anything else, they're just distracting and delaying the revolution, the great BTC revolution. And it would never even occur to these people that they are the ones who are delaying the BTC revolution by, disabling the culture of truth and making it impossible to talk about, fix Bitcoin's problems. So they just basically have this claim to certitude. They're absolutely certain that they are right. And they think, okay, Bitcoin is the way to go. They're absolutely certain of that. And if you're absolutely certain of anything, that's how you're going to react. You're going to say, well, no one should do anything else. We could find plenty of fundamentalist Islam people who think, they've also found certainty. And you could find that in every, you can go down the line and there's all kinds of organizations, political organizations, religious cults, etc. So people, whenever anyone is certain that they've found the truth, that's usually a clue that you should run away, and they have not found the truth. And I think that's the case here. So the argument is something like, we know that Bitcoin BTC is the best. We know that it's going to fix everything. So who are all these people who are saying that that's not true? Oh, they must be liars, or talking to them is a waste of time. And yeah, the irony is, of course, a lot of people saying this, like I joined the Bitcoin community a long time ago. I was like presenting at scaling 1 and scaling 2 and 3, and I was in the program committee. For not saying that matters, but this idea that people are just absolutely certain, they believe they're absolutely certain to have found the truth. That's what gets you in the end. They should look into, why people disagree with them, I think.
Yeah, no, I think that's a real good point too. Again, that plays into the hubris, I would think, right?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, only 5 minutes left. So jump up quick.
Paul, I think you should also repeat the first talking points about the mining pool and the bounty, because when you were saying that,
Okay.
it was maybe only 10, 15 people listening, and now there's more of them.
We're doing a bug bounty. You can scroll back through my tweets to find the link, or you can go to drivechain.info, find the articles section, where there's a blog post. And it's $100,000. And I'm going to massively increase it if there's lots of bugs being found. But 100,000, and basically it's 5 rounds of 20,000 per round, and you find bugs and you send them in, and then every 2 weeks, whoever has found the most bugs, especially bugs in certain software, and especially severe bugs, and especially bugs that other people didn't find. So this is all explained in the post. But yeah, if you find those types of bugs, you can get first place. And if you get in first place and no one else enters, then you win $20,000. Otherwise, you win some other amount of money, which I have a chart. So then there is prizes for first, second, and third place. And if there are lots of bugs are found, then maybe I'll expand it and I'll make it, first through 5th place, or we'll add more money or something. And so that's the bug bounty contest. And then also we have this new thing, SimplePool, and it is brand new, and not everything is implemented yet. But it's just the starting point, because I've always wanted there to be an open source pool. I think we should have this open source pool software so we all know exactly what's going on in the pool, and we should optimize it so that the pools themselves want to use it. And it's like some, really good open source library that's just the best the best available. We should also have this pool hopper software so that miners don't have to think as much about, they just point their hash at one thing and it will decide for them if they want, which pool to go to so that they get the most money, PPS. And then there's also a way of the pool paying people out without the pool custodying the funds. So that's also better. So that's preliminary, but that's also, I announced it, and there's links to my writing on this topic on how it should work and why, and there's also a link to the GitHub. And it is not supposed to actually replace any of the brands, like Foundry or whatever. Ideally, they would just use this software. And if people don't want to use it, then they don't have to. But I think that we want people to have. I just think there should be an open source pool that just is committed to aggressively revenue maximizing. So it's the opposite of Luke's censorship, money destroying pool in that way. Okay, so now it's only 2 minutes left. So if you're really, really fast, you can hop up.
I see that
But if
Robin
not,
is here. I would love to have him on to share some opinions.
well, he can come up, but there's not that much time. So he can hop up, but I selected a tweet of his for my Lightning tweet this morning about I had other tweets, but he's like, the people who are in the know, the people who are very, very knowledgeable about Lightning, they just don't think that the non-custodial Lightning will actually work. So there's publicly available information about that. I think we'll have to wait until next week for more questions, but this has been great, even though we only had very few people this time, but we had pretty good conversation nonetheless, or maybe because of that, I don't know. But now it's 6:30, so I have to go. But this has been really great, so see everyone next week. I'm thinking about changing the format. Maybe I'll go to Clubhouse or something else, I don't know, but I'll let everyone know. I'll post the announcement. So thanks very much, and thanks to everyone who asked questions and made comments. So thanks. See you guys later.